Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we preview the Detroit Lions Week 15 matchup against the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about what we expect out of this game and the possible implications, win or lose. We'll also wrap up the conversation from the Lions' latest win and discuss the state of the team and try to put the season thus far into perspective. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Trevor Nowatzki, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week, named by the Detroit Lions. He's also the current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, it's great having you here.
Great being here. Snowy night, talking football.
That it is. And joining both of us is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle, not to be confused with the running back who's going to be on the field against the Lions this week. You can also hear this James Cook on the Get Around podcast that drops on Monday. James, good to have you here.
Good to be here. 12-1, like Jerry said.
I think that was a mantra at the end of last show.
Yeah. I do actually have a James Cook Buffalo Bills jersey that my wife gave me.
Don't bring it out.
But I'm not wearing that to the game on Sunday.
No, definitely the wrong week for that one. Maybe if they were playing Green Bay or Minnesota or something like that. Speaking of Green Bay, let's get some final thoughts from that last game. There's been a lot of dissecting. I think a lot of surface level dissecting, if you ask me, about they're calling it the Campbell gamble. I heard one person say about the way Dan Campbell gambles. And again, I think that's surface level analysis. Because, you know, those players were prepared for this. He looks at each game. He knows what it's going to take to be successful or not be successful and the type of approach you're going to have. The Lions were 4 for 5 on fourth down in that game. And the one fourth down play that didn't work, we talked about this. I went back and rewatched it again, Coach. There were, in fact, 2 missed blocks and 1 block that was not held long enough. I mean, we had a tight end and a receiver who both missed their blocks. And Brock Wright and Amon-Ra St. Brown are both pretty good at blocking. And Penei Sewell had a block, but didn't hold it long enough. Those are 3 guys right there that got through. Jahmyr Gibbs still made 2 people miss on that play. It was not a bad play call. Just certain things didn't happen. And they missed their block for a variety of reasons. The guy took a different angle. They overran something. You know, all these things. So, you know, if it works, it keeps the defense off the field. It keeps the offense going. Yes, it put them in a bad situation, and it didn't work because of that. But, Coach, do you think people are overreacting? I mean, why are so many people criticizing him? Is it because they haven't seen this type of football before, or do they have a legitimate gripe in this stuff?
Part of it's football. Part of it's like, oh, my God, why are you going for it on fourth down? I mean, you know, watch the game, watch the analytics, take the situation at hand, what's going on in that part of the game. What do you need to do to win a football game? And Dan Campbell picks that. You know, how many times can you say this year that 3 of our best blocking guys in their position missed blocks or didn't hold blocks? It's just
right.
the game. And here's the other thing, too. Let's talk about, you know, oh, my God, why did he do it? What did he do? There were 2 games on Sunday. One team kicked the field goal with 40-some seconds left and lost, right? Another team went for it on 4th and 5 and won. Hey, keep doing what you're doing, Dan Campbell. What is it again? 1-0. We're just going to say 1-0 this week, but that's the situation, you know. And they take those situations at hand, and sometimes it is a gut feeling, and the gut feeling was let's not give Love back the ball, and it worked out right.
And you know, I heard somebody else pose this question, and I think it's very appropriate. If you're a Green Bay Packer fan, you don't want the Lions going for it on 4th and inches right there. You want them to kick that field goal. You need them to kick that field goal because you need that ball back to have a chance to win. I mean, I think that's the most honest answer. You can criticize him for going for it, but every Green Bay Packer fan didn't want him to go for it. So you're criticizing him for what the other team didn't want him to do. And so that's kind of interesting. But, James, before we head to the next thing, what do you got?
Yeah, and they're mad at their own defense for not stopping it.
That too. You know,
Just that's
Packers
very simple.
fans in general were not happy on social media. And I got to tell you, Dan Orlovsky broke down a penalty and it was close, but he said, you know, technically it's a penalty, but it's really close. And I'm like, I commented on it and I said, yeah, well, that's still more of a legit penalty than the hands to the face that we had against the Packers. I said like 6 years ago, but I think it was like 8 or 9. And that happened twice. And that I think Trey Flowers got called for it, and that cost us the game. And then there was that face mask one where our guy's hand is on the face mask and maybe in it, but he doesn't grab the face mask. And man, I had my eyes opened, my ears opened a little bit based on some of the responses from these Packers fans, and I couldn't believe the angst with these posts that were directed. And James, in the last episode, you talked about some wine with that cheese. You saw some of this as well.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna treat their complaints about this game as about as seriously as they did Lions' complaints about the face mask 6 years ago. I imagine they didn't care a bit that they won a game on maybe a call that wasn't made or something. So I'm gonna give it the same amount of validity, their complaints this time around.
There you go. And that's all we're going to spend on that one, folks, because it's time to move on. Before we get to the Buffalo preview, we want to bring up some historical perspective here. Sometimes when you're in the moment, you don't always realize what that moment is. Now, I think most Lions fans kind of do because we lived through last year and we lived through like the previous 30 to 50 years of football. But I want to point out in 1991, guys, our record, that was our first 12-win season that year. We were 12-4. We won the NFC North at the time. We went to the NFC Championship, the NFC Central. Our point differential, you guys, was 44 points, plus 44. Now, I know, different era for offense and defense in the NFL, so keep that in mind. Last year, we were 12-5. We went to the NFC Championship game. Second time ever we had 12 wins. Second time ever we had the NFC Championship game in the modern era. Our point differential was 66 points. Even better. The Lions currently sit at 12-1, as we all know. It's an 11-game win streak. Before last year, we only had one 12-win season in our entire history, and we had just won 11 games in a row. We don't know how this story is going to end, you guys, but our current point differential is 183, nearly triple a year ago. And that's super impressive considering the patchwork defense that was required to go on the field last week against Green Bay. So, guys, we've gone over so many stats. I want to kind of talk right now. Start with you, James, and then Coach. What's a successful season? Is it Super Bowl or bust for a successful season? Is it getting there just enough? What is a successful season? Or are there so many caveats that it's kind of hard to define it? Or is it already a successful season, James?
I mean, you can make an argument that it's already a successful season. I mean, the Detroit Lions have become a team that everybody in the NFL and everybody, a lot of people around the country are embracing because of the way they play. So as a Lions fan, that's got to make you pretty happy. But I think on the field, I think it's Super Bowl or bust. Winning it, you never know, but getting there, you always want to get at least one step farther than you got the year before, and that's getting to the Super Bowl this year.
All right, Coach, how about you? You kind of in agreement with James, or what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with James on that. I think one of the, from a coaching standpoint, keep stacking the days. I mean, you've heard me say that. Keep stacking days. If you get a minute, you make sure you get 2 good minutes, 3 minutes. Same thing. We keep stacking, we keep growing, we keep getting better. And I think, we talked about at the beginning of the year where we thought we would be after 12 games, where we thought we would be after 13 games. We all 3 were behind. We never doubted that they couldn't be here. We just figured with all the different things that are going to happen within the season. So, and with injuries and look what we're still doing. So, keep stacking them. And yeah, I mean, it's New Orleans and raise it, that's the mantra. That's what they're after. But, again, just keep stacking them, boys.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with that stacking part because I said, is there a caveat, right? Because yes, James, you're right. It's been a successful season. We're 12-1 at this point. Ultimately, it's going to be how it ends or what it looks like. And there's a variety of ways it could end, and there could be multiple influences as to why it ends, right? It could be going out great. It could be just missing something. It could be something else happening. And so I think it's hard to simply just say, you make it to the NFC Championship game, it's a successful season, or you just make it to the Super Bowl. You kind of have to see what are all the things that go on around that situation. And the Lions, I want to draw a parallel to something that I experienced in college basketball back in the 2001-2002 era of Maryland basketball. In 2001, Maryland went to the Final Four. They were there with Michigan State and Duke and Arizona. Maryland played Duke in the semifinals. They had a 20-point lead, biggest blown lead ever in the Final Four, and they went home in the semifinals. The following year, they were the team that everyone thought was going to be there, and they had to defend it all season long and take everybody's shots. And in the end, they won it all. And, there are some parallels I see, even though it's a different sport. The Lions were in the same type of position in the semifinal game. And this year, they've been taking everybody's shots, and they're handling them, and even these best shots. So, Coach, you said one game at a time. That's all you can do. And that's what we have to do, because Philly and Minnesota are not giving us any breathing room. That's the other thing. I mean, imagine being a Vikings fan right now and thinking, wow, we're 11-2, and we're not even winning our own division right now. The Lions are on an 11-game winning streak. Eagles have won 9 straight. Vikings have won 6. And then the Seahawks have won 4 in a row. The Packers, they have an impressive record. The NFC North, Lions, Packers, and Vikings are like 28-3 against the rest of the NFL since like October. And then the Bucs have won 3 straight. The Rams are looking hot. James, I mean, we got to talk about the NFC North and the NFC conference as a whole, because it's not that big of a difference between the number 1 seed and the wild card seed right now in the NFC.
No, I mean, it's looking like the worst case scenario for the Lions right now would be the 5 seed, but that would assume losing out, which again,
Right.
nobody sees it. The Bills have won 4 in a row against Detroit too. Over the last, I think they play them like every 4 years. I think
Yeah.
pretty much until now they've played them at only 2 years in between. So they've won the last 4 straight, including the last 2 at Ford Field. They've actually won 3 straight games at Ford Field, because they had that game a couple years ago that got snowed out. That got moved to Detroit, and they won that game against Cleveland. So they've won 3 games in a row at Ford Field.
Right, but you also were going to talk about the Lions' playoff situation and their tiebreaker.
Yeah, pretty much. The Lions, if they end up going to 15-2, which allows them to lose 1 game of these last 4, they will still control every tiebreaker with the Vikings and the Eagles. Like they can afford to lose 1 game of these last 4 and still get the number 1 seed, no questions. Any more than that, it becomes possibly an issue.
Yeah, there's a really awesome chart that somebody put together that showed every possible scenario, right? And that is, you're right. If they lose any of the final 4 games, just 1, they win the other 3, they are guaranteed the number 1 seed and the division. Now, here's the other thing. They can also lose any 2 games, as long as it's not the Vikings game, and still win the division. And they still have a decent chance of getting the number 1 seed overall. So those are some things right there that tell you there is some breathing room, but there's not a whole lot. And so with all these other teams getting hot, again, we don't know the way the season's going to end. So I want to pull a line out we used last year around this time. To all Lions fans out there, I hope you're enjoying this ride, because this is a unique season. I think you're going to remember this season for a long, long time. I'm already going to remember last season for a very long time. And so this season is just taking us in a different situation. Coach, anything you want to add before we move on to injury updates?
It's easy to remember these last 2 seasons because it's been so long since we've had one that even compared to these seasons. And what? I'm enjoying it. And to see all these other fans out there whining and crying, I love it.
Nice. All right. Well, let's move on to the state of the team health-wise, all right? Coach Campbell was not too committal on the injuries, but the practice report came out, and we had a full practice by Taylor Decker, a full practice by Aleem McNeil. We had limited practice by Levi Onzarike and Josh Paschal, and then DJ Reader did not practice. I think I heard he may have suited up and may have done some work with the training staff on the sideline. So that's our practice report. Again, it's going to get updated over the next couple days, and final decisions will probably get made on Saturday or Sunday. So, James, I want to start with you, then I'm going to go to Coach. James, who is the most important guy for the Lions to get back? Is there just one guy, or is it simply get as many of these guys back as possible, and we'll see what happens?
Well, I would take all of them, obviously. Get as many of them as back as possible. But given that if you only need to take one, I think it, I think it's Aleem. You got to have Aleem. If you only have if Reader's out, you got to have Aleem. I think the second most important one would be Pascal. To get him back, just to have that other end opposite Zadarius Smith and be able to come at Josh Allen from both sides a little bit more effectively, which is something they're going to have to do to try to contain him. I mean, he is the best quarterback that they will have faced this season, and it's not close.
Yeah. I mean, probably the best one they've faced since Matthew Stafford. Coach, how about you? What are your thoughts on this practice report? Who's the most important guy to get back?
Same thing, just like James said. Boy, I want them all. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out. I love the way the defense played last week, and with those guys in there, McNeil and Reader would be great to have. Pascal would be great to have. But I think if we could just get one guy back off that group, which it's trending that we're going to have more than one guy, yep. I'd say Decker. And the reason I'd say that is because that puts Skipper to the reporting eligible, and that puts our offense into, if we get into a shootout, I know we can control this shootout by run game with being able to go that big personnel. Not 13P was great last week, but I think 12P is even better, because then you can bring Big Skip in and let him do what he does. And so that's just off my feeling, even though defense wins championships.
Jerry, how happy would you be if Decker was back and they still went 13 with Skipper as one of the three?
I would be in heaven. I think they'd call that 14P or 13 double size.
13 and a half.
13 and a half.
Yeah, I would love to see Decker back. I think that's a big one. Yeah, that gives your offense at full strength, because that might be needed. Again, we're hoping that you're going to get at least 3 of these guys back for the game, and that would be big to get some more help on that defensive line. And we'll get into the defensive line more as well. Before we do that, though, let's hear from Coach Campbell.
So, look, this is a top-tier opponent, so we're looking forward to it. And, there's no place you'd rather be than playing this type of football, this type of team in December. So we're looking forward to it.
All right, guys. I mean, Coach Campbell, you hear there, he's talking about this is the type of football they want to be playing. And, the race staying tight like this actually keeps some right type of pressure on them, is what he was saying. He says it keeps them motivated. And he says he doesn't expect those other teams in the race to lose. So it keeps the Lions focused, and it's not like you're just blowing all these teams out and you have a 6-game lead and you can rest on your laurels. It keeps you focused. Coach, speak to that for just a moment. How important of a mindset is that for the coaching staff and for the players this time of year? I mean, you've been grinding for, over 3 months at this point, even more counting training camp.
Well, and Campbell even said it, the biggest thing was, first of all, it's a challenge. You always want a big challenge like that. He's been saying the last couple of weeks, these are playoff games. These are playoff games because people are chasing us, and to see our guys game in and game out in these playoff games with different adversity thrown at us. You thrive on something like this. You got a team, and we'll talk about that. And I'll give you all the rundown on Josh Allen too. But you have a team that's playing at a high level right now, and you have a team that's, possibly has the MVP as a quarterback and a very talented team. And they got to come into our place. So, and again, this stuff is all, if we just talked about it's Super Bowl or bust. If that's the belief, then these are games that get us ready for that Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because you're playing a high-level opponent right here. Some people are saying, hey, it's an AFC team. This doesn't really matter. Maybe we should keep some of these guys out longer just to get them rested up. But the Lions want to win, and they want to show that they can play with a team. They want to see if they can play with a team like this. It's another good test against that. And, the Bills just lost in a shootout to the Rams. And I'm not sure that, that has any effect on their meeting with the Lions. In the past, you're like, oh, hey, this team's out on a 10-game winning streak. We want them to win their next game so that way they don't have their letdown game and then we have to face their repercussions. But, James, I mean, do you think there's any effect on what happened last week with the Bills and Rams versus this week for the Lions?
Well, I think it's going to be a motivator for the Bills. Their defense is going to be upset that they gave up that many points. The Lions and the Rams had a shootout. The Bills and the Rams had a shootout. So I think we're maybe in store for the Lions and the Bills to have a shootout. But I think they're just going to be extra motivated by that game. So it's going to be something else in the Rams' back pocket. So in doing some of the research, I've been come around a lot of things where I've just been like, man, this Buffalo team is really good, and I'm really, really worried about this game. But the one good thing is that they're wearing their stormtrooper uniforms.
Yeah.
So it's white on white. And they are 0-1 when wearing that. They've only done it once before, and they lost to the Houston Texans when they had that uniform combination. So there's your fashion
right.
report.
Well, it sounds like the Lions are going to go with the all-black uniforms. And so, which is awesome. And so then I have to ask you guys this. If we're talking fashion right now, James, and Coach, you can weigh in on this. The Lions have only worn the blue and grays once, and that was against Tampa in week 2, and we lost that game. We have not sported the traditional blue and gray since. We've been all monochrome since then, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think there's a reason for that, Coach? Do you think there's a superstition going at this point that they won't mess with that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think as coaches and as players, you always think about things like that, and oh my God, we lost in that uniform. Oh my God, does it make you a winner? No, but it's something to hang a hat on, or wear a helmet on. Hey, I wear that leather helmet every Sunday, boys, and I got a major headache when we get done. I'm not taking it off.
And Coach, I want to be honest. I was hoping when we played Tennessee or Jacksonville, we would just wear the blue and grays because you knew we were going to win those games, and this whole psychological thing could be gone because I love the look of the blue and silver. I call it blue and gray, but the blue and silver, right? The Honolulu blue and silver, because that's just a great look. And once they went to the white lettering on the jerseys again, I was like, oh, man, such a great classic look. And so I don't know. I don't know what the plan is, for them, if they're going to stay monochrome the rest of the season, if there'll be a game they go back to that. But talk about going back. James, we brought that game from 2 years ago against the Bills. I went back and watched the condensed version of that. And that's the game we almost won. That's a game after which Taylor Decker came out and said, these are not the same old Lions. We're not the same old Lions. It's not the same old Lions. Helped inspire the name of this podcast. And they showed it because they reeled off a whole bunch of wins. And again, after that game, that was one of 2 losses they had the rest of that season after that first win. And if we're talking Green Bay a minute, guys, I was at that Green Bay game when the Lions were 1-6 and this whole thing started. James was at the Green Bay game at the end of the season where we went 9-8. Coach was at the Green Bay game last week. We've all been at some Green Bay victories, Lions victories over Green Bay. So they all felt kind of good. I like how we all kind of did the Green Bay victory trifecta. But going back to that game, our team is so much better than 2 years ago. I mean, we had Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift as our running backs in that game, and no shade thrown at them, but David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are of a different caliber, and our offense has evolved since then. Ben Johnson has gotten better since then. Now, of course, the Bills are different too, and James, I want to hear you on this because full transparency, over the offseason, I thought there were 2 NFL teams that did not really improve. the Dallas Cowboys and the Buffalo Bills. Those are two teams I looked at. I'm like, what are they doing? The Dallas Cowboys completely imploded. All right. The Buffalo Bills started the season, I think, 3-2. And then a week or two later, they made the trade for Amari Cooper. And I think the Amari Cooper trade's been a good thing for them. But they have done really well this season. I think the big reason they're doing this well is Josh Allen has really returned to the Josh Allen of maybe 3 years ago. And then that was something that was missing. So I still stand by the fact that the team did not improve as much as I thought they could have this offseason. And when they lost their number one receiver, it wasn't until they brought Amari Cooper in. But James, this Buffalo Bills team is looking very dangerous. So let's start there with the Buffalo Bills offense. What are you expecting out of them?
I'm kind of with you that I agree that, in the offseason, I was like not impressed with what they did in the offseason. I mean, they had a good draft, but I mean, they didn't do a whole lot in free agency and they lost a bunch of guys and they made the trade for sending away Diggs. So I didn't really think that they were a better team either. I thought this was going to be Miami's division kind of to lose, given with what they had. But, I've been
Yeah.
wrong a lot. So, but their offense looks good. Their Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman are trending towards playing this week, which will give them two more weapons. They've scored 30 points or more in 7 straight games. So their offense is clicking just as much as Detroit's is. With Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, Coleman, and Curtis Samuel, they're pretty loaded at wide receiver. And they've got another couple of veteran wide receivers behind them too that can step in and play if need be. And then with Knox and Kincaid at tight end, they've got a good pair there. The offensive line is solid, not the greatest in the world, or at least how they're performing this season, but they're solid. And Josh Allen's rushing ability completely complements that. I mean, that they don't have to run the ball and pound the ball with James Cook 25 times a game because you've got Josh Allen taking off 8 to 10 to 12 times a game. I mean, he's like I said, Josh Allen is just the best quarterback head and shoulders above anybody that they've played so far this season.
Yeah, and you're right. Those receivers have done a really good job. Some of them who you weren't expecting to. I mean, Curtis Samuel's a solid guy, but you weren't expecting much out of the guy this year. And, it's been a role play, but a lot of these guys have been role plays. They have a number of guys that have 20, 25 receptions on this team, even 30 receptions. So the Lions are the only team that's been spreading the ball around. And as you talked about, the Bills' scoring offense, they are averaging 30.5 points a game. They are one of the top 2 scoring offenses in the league. And they're 10th in total yards. Their rush is slightly better than their pass coach. So what are you thinking you're going to see out of this offense by the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I got 2 things. First of all, let's talk about Josh Allen. And Coach Campbell talked about it, and it's not the press conference today, but the first one about how much he has improved. And I think that's one of the things we got to look at. They felt they had the pieces in there, and you had Coleman and a few of those other guys. So I'm gonna throw some numbers at you, which is what tells you that Josh Allen focused on himself as becoming a better quarterback and a better leader. He's been sacked in just 10.2% of his pressure dropbacks this season. That's the second lowest rate. Okay, 10.2. But this all kinds of come. He has recorded 27.1% scramble rate on third down. Okay. But he's looking down the field on these scramble rates. He's not just taking off and running. That's the highest in the NFL. His throwing mechanisms, he's dropped to 2.77 second career quick average. So he's getting the ball out in 2.77. I think a lot of those games before you used to watch, he'd stand there and then, all of a sudden he'd have pressure and trying to run around. So I think that's helped out.
Yeah.
These are a couple of cool things here is he's got his 7.4 air yard career low by over a full yard. So in other words, he's not throwing the ball 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20 yards downfield. He's at averaging 7.4. Okay, that's huge. He's doing so now. He's getting into his check down. Okay, but on his he's had 40 scrambles this year. He's at an air of 19 air yards, average of 19 air yards. So when he's scrambling, he's turning the rock loose. He's taking the shots down the field, with their scramble things. Okay. So those are kind of couple. Now, a couple other big things. 59.3% of his total passing yards come after the catch. You guys saw Shakira the other day, right? He took that one to the house. And so that also translates into those 7.4s and stuff like that. And then he's a 1.4 designated run, which is a career low. So he's only 1.4 where they've called a run play with him before. And I'll bet if we go back to that one, how many times did you guys see him run quarterback draws and stuff in the past? So he has really changed his game around. And I think that should play. If our defense has been playing like they've been playing, they're not going to get those big splash plays. We haven't been giving those up. So, and then the biggest negative on him, he's 43% under pressure. Okay. Jared Goff is 55% under pressure. So 43.
As far as a pass completion rate, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Pass completion rate. So if you look at just so that, I know I throw a ton of numbers at you and stuff like that, but those are things that, that's the analytic thing. And that's the stuff that he has changed his game and put it in the hands of the people around him and said, I don't have to win all these games, even though he wants the ball in his hands when he gets a chance. So
that he does. And he can make plays happen when he gets that in his hands. And so that's huge. I mean, even though he has changed his game, the old school part of him can help win games still. Didn't he rush for 3 touchdowns last week while throwing for 3? So he is consistently that dual threat, James. And you know what happens if he gets a touchdown this week, James?
If he scores a rushing touchdown this week, he'll enter the top 50 all-time in quarterback rushing touchdowns.
Wow.
It would be 63. The record is Cam Newton with 75. So that's like one more season for him. And Josh Allen is, I would say, maybe halfway through his career. I mean, he's not that old of a quarterback, really. He's gonna crush this record.
Yeah, that is impressive. And so, how's our Lions defense handle this? I mean, we are number 2 in points allowed this year. Our defense is doing really well with that. Part of that 183-point differential that we have going on. We are 10th in giving up yards, 5th against the rush, and 23rd against the pass. And I think the unique challenge here is going to be like when you play the Baltimore Ravens, right? Can you contain the running game, which includes the quarterback? Because we want to make them one-dimensional. We have to take the running game out. Sure, you can take James Cook out and slow him down, but can you slow Josh Allen down too? Or is Josh Allen going to beat you on the ground as well, James?
Yeah, and that's their thunder and lightning, or their Sonic and Knuckles is Cook and Allen, really. I mean, and Allen is the Knuckles part of it.
That's funny, but true.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one other thing about the Lions defense is the Lions are 8-0 since Aiden Hutchinson got hurt. It's like
crazy.
Did you even never think that would be possible after he got hurt, that the Lions would win the next 8 games in a row?
Nope.
That's just insane. And then the other thing is, so the guy they got to replace or fill in for Hutchinson, I would say, Zadarius Smith, in 9 games with the Browns, he had 27 pressures, 20 hurries, 2 QB hits, 5 sacks. In 4 games with the Lions, he has 20 pressures, 14 hurries, 2 hits, and 4 sacks.
James, I did not think he was going to be a sack machine when he came here, to be honest. I thought he'd get a few the rest of it. I thought he might get 4 the rest of this season for us, but just play a different type of role and help increase that pass rush. But those numbers are astounding.
Yeah, he's been a menace in the 4 games that he's been here for Detroit. I mean, it's great to see. And that 5th year, or that option that they have next year on him, is not prohibitive cost at all. So they can keep him at a reasonable cost and have him opposite of Aiden Hutchinson next year. That could be electric.
That it could. Coach, what are you thinking from this Lions defense here? How are they going to attack? Are we going to make sure we limit those explosives like you talked about earlier by keeping our safeties back? If the front guys can limit the run game, then the safeties can stay deep and prevent, the explosives?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing on them is we got to tackle in space. If there's a ball thrown in front of us, we got to make sure we make those tackles. And that's kind of what I talked about, alluded about is, 59.3% of their total passing yards are after catch. Not that
Right. A
they're
lot of
breaking
yak.
a lot of yak, and it's not that they're saying they're breaking tackles. It's that he's finding these open players. And I think that's the biggest thing, devising the scramble rule. There's a couple things on offense too that I found out that these are huge things that I know AG's found out, and some for people to look at. Of course, me, 12, 13 personnel. I'm a guy. They run that jumbo personnel with an extra offensive lineman 15% of the time. So that would be skipper checking, and they use Alec Anderson in this. Okay.
Okay.
Now, so that's a run formation, correct? They throw the ball 24% of the time out of that. Okay.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to allude to this is now you have an extra lineman. You have one less receiver that Josh Allen has to look for. Reading routes, two receiver routes and three receiver routes is a lot easier than going to 2x2 and going left, right, and trying to read through there. And you got better blocking concepts. So, how will the Lions adjust their defense to that? Well, we play a lot of base personnel, with the 4-3. Again, we can't do it as much now because of the injuries, but we can still line up in our forefront and still put some bodies out there to offset the big guy. So that'll be interesting that'll be a neat setup to see how we do with that. A couple other things off that is 49.6% of their design runs this season are the weak side of the formation. That's kind of that's 46%. You're not saying they're going to run left 50% and right 50%. You're going to the weak formation because you still have your middle runs. And so I think that's a pretty big number. And I think that's something that, we should be able to work on. So you got the jumbo personnel with 6 offense linemen. Then with their trip set, 62.9% of the time they line up in trips. Okay, 3 receivers to one side, and that's the highest in the NFL. So what I'm trying to say right now is they have a lot of formation tendencies that we're going to have to, and not a ton of stuff that you have to come up with to where our defense is going to be losing their mind a little bit, going, "Oh my God, what are we supposed to do here?" So I think that, and if Kincaid is back, 67.9% of his routes are from the slot. Okay.
Okay. They've been lining him up over there.
He's not attached. Okay. What I mean by
Yep.
not attached is he's not next to one of the tackles. So there's a lot of cool tendencies in there. And again, if we identify those, we keep them from those big splash plays, those yaks after catches. We eliminate their run game, whether it's in the six offensive lineman personnel or the regular personnel. Our defense should be in pretty good shape.
All right. And those linebackers are going to be pretty busy, James, and Jack Campbell's going to be the guy holding that unit together.
Yeah, I mean, he's been just the backbone of that linebacking core and the defense this year. I mean, obviously he's been one of the few ones that have been healthy the whole time. Knock on wood, he has played all the whole time. But I mean, according to PFF, he's the 9th highest graded linebacker for the whole season this year, and he's top 13 in run defense, in tackling, and in coverage. So he's doing everything well. He's also got one of the lowest missed tackle rates in the NFL out of all the linebackers that qualify for that. So I think it's going to be big for him this week, just given that Allen likes to run. You've got to account for James Cook, and they have 2 good tight ends that they can go to as well. So he's going to have to have split up his duties a little bit between watching a little bit of all of that.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, all those numbers Coach gave us, man, understanding the different formations they're going to be going with. The Lions defense is going to have their hands full. And here's some other good news. So even though we don't know who's coming back, Coach Campbell kind of reminded us that, all those guys that just came in off the streets, all those Northern Savages, they should be even better this week than last week, because they had 3 to 4 days to prepare. If that, now you had like 7 to 10 days to prepare. And so they're going to even be able to do more of a game plan versus hey, go in and just do these couple of things and go play. It's like remember the Titans, right? When they pulled one guy off the field and they told someone else to go play that position. He's like, I don't know what to do. He goes, well, just cover the guy for this game and we'll teach you more as it goes on. I mean, I'm obviously oversimplifying everything. these guys know what they're doing. It's a much higher level, but they kept the assignments simple, coach. And now that they've had more time, those guys can understand the bigger complexity of the scheme, which is going to allow AG to do even more things on defense. Am I right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And again, those are veterans. Those guys have been in the war before. They've been in the trenches before, and like they just said, maximum effort. Maximum effort. Just go hit people and play hard. And again, it's simple defense, right? If you play hard, good things are going to happen. If you're going to make a mistake, make it fast.
All right, James.
Yeah, I heard a great name that they came up with for all the practice squad guys that the Lions have been playing on defense. They called it the Legion of Whom.
I had not heard that one before. That's
Uh,
nice.
it's because it's interesting. Those guys, there's basically 10 guys who played last week that were on the practice squad at one time or another this season or on somebody else's practice squad. They had a combined 313 snaps in the NFL this season. Prior to that game, 139 of those were Muhammad. And they played a combined 212 snaps for the Lions last week.
Wow, amazing, and they played well.
And they played pretty darn good. I mean, they played well enough to win.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is impressive. I mean, you guys, I've got the program from the opening game, okay? the Rams versus the Lions, September 8th, okay? I mean, our starting defense, again, was Marcus Davenport, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, and Aiden Hutchinson. Those were our front four. None of those guys were on, well, McNeil was on the field for a little bit, but then got hurt. And then you had Alex Anzalone and Derek Barnes to go with Jack Campbell. I mean, that was our starting lineup. Who are the backups up there, right? We got Josh Pascal, Makai Wingo, Levi Onwuzurike, James Houston. I mean, there's nobody after them. And so that is the Legion of Whom. You're exactly right, because they weren't there. We don't know who they were. And so it's really incredible. I mean, we say it, but do we fully comprehend what this defense did last week in that first half against the Packers? It's incredible. And it should not be taken for granted. And when you hear Dan Campbell or Jared Goff say this team is special, it's really hard to argue with that. And so one other thing Campbell did say this week, the offense is going to have to get some touchdowns, meaning red zone. We can't be settling for field goals in this one. And so the Lions average 32.1 points a game, right? They're number 2 in total yards. Their rush and pass offense are both, I think, 4th or so in the NFL. They're both really good. And so they're balanced. They're very balanced in this one. One thing I think the Lions are going to do, I watched a lot of that Rams game against the Bills. And the Rams, the breakdown that I saw is they used a lot of motion. And that caused some problems for the Bills defense. And the Lions love using motion as well. I think the Lions are going to do a lot of that. James, let's start with you. What are you expecting out of the Lions offense?
Well, I think getting Decker back will be huge. While he hasn't been up to kind of the last couple of years, I would say, overall, he's still a dependable left tackle in the NFL. And, Skipper did a pretty admirable job the last few weeks filling in for him, but getting Decker back into that lineup just opens up the whole playbook for Ben Johnson. I think he took a few plays out last week, figuring that he had to get the ball out even faster than normal, just because, Skipper in those couple of games took a little while to warm up. But getting Decker back, I think Ben Johnson can call whatever he wants. So you'll see the full offense on display. And, like you said, he loves using motion. He loves putting guys in motion pre-snap. Goff loves putting guys in motion pre-snap because it tells him what the defense is doing, whether it's man or zone. So I think you're going to see a lot of that.
All right, Coach, how about you? I mean, one other great thing that, you're going to love from Dan Campbell is they asked him about Jared Goff possibly winning the MVP, and he said winning the MVP is not Goff's focus. He just wants to find a way to win games, and I know that's right up your alley.
Yeah, take care of the little things. The big things will take care of themselves. And I just loved hearing that. And, because they asked him that question, and I kind of started laughing. I'm like, that's the wrong guy to be asking that question. Okay, first of all, they did put it on him that they think that Josh Allen is going to be the MVP guy, which is awesome. because what
Yeah.
does that do? That ignites our defense going, we're going to make sure he is not in that anymore because our guy is better than him. So yeah, I just love that stuff. So, but yeah, they care about winning football games. That's what this team's all about.
They do. They do. And so the Lions offense led by Jared Goff. I mean, again, we talk about how this team was different. We didn't have Jamison Williams on this team the last time we faced them. We did not have Sam Laporta on this team. We didn't have Tim Patrick on this team. It's a very different receiving core. I mean, we had some talented receivers back then, but what are you expecting from the Lions offense, especially if we're able to get Decker back?
Well, I think a couple things that their defense does. Okay, they run 4-man front 80% of the time. Okay, that's the highest in the NFL.
The Bills defense does this stuff.
Yes, the Bills
Okay.
defense. Yep. So I'm talking about what our offense is going to see. Third lowest blitz rate at 18%, yet they generate 48% of the pressure. So they're using those 4-man guys to try to generate that pressure, which is second the highest in the league. That Tyron Johnson, which is he's a slot corner. He's in the box 39.6% of the time on defensive snaps. Okay. So now you have a slot corner. So you've taken a linebacker out and you brought a slot corner in there. They utilize a 5+ defensive backs. Okay. Again, that's that Johnson thing. 97.2% of defensive snaps. Okay. Highest mark in NFL. So they bring in a 5th defensive back 97% of the time. Okay. They've only given up 6.7% of total passes this year have been the 20+ air downfield, 20+ air yards. Okay.
Right. So they're running so what you're saying is they're running a nickel defense a lot,
Yes.
and they're not giving up too many explosive more than 20 yards down the field.
Exactly. So that guy down, bringing the safety down into the box to help stop the run. Okay.
Yep.
That's why you're not getting the over top passes. Okay. So I went back and I ran the comparison between them and the Green Bay defense because I see a lot of similarities in it. Okay. So Green Bay, cover 1. Okay. So 1 middle of field closed, 1 guy over top. Everybody else is man to man. Green Bay does it 19.6% of the time. The Bills at 18. Okay.
Yep.
Cover 3, which is still your middle of the field, right? But you got 2 defensive backs. You're dividing the field in thirds. Okay. The Bills 33.5% of the time. The Packers 34% of the time. That is what's eliminating those deep routes. Okay. That's what the press coverage eliminates them because they don't get off clean, which I think J-Mo can a little bit more. And then cover 6, and I'm worried about that. So what I'm saying from that is you're going to get I think the same concept. I think you're going to get the same thing that we saw last week where they're kind of coming in the box to try to slow our rundown. Well, Green Bay did a great job slowing our rundown. So the Bills are watching film and going, oh my God, look what they did here. Oh my God, look what they did here. Oh my God. Well, first of all, Decker's going to be back, right? Skipper's going to be reporting eligible. Okay. And we're going to pass. We're going to throw the ball around. 6 receivers with 5 or plus more catches last week. 6 different receivers. Okay. So if we don't get the run game going, guess what? The little check downs and those things are going to be happening again. And then we'll see how many yaks we can get. So I just think those are kind of neat numbers, especially the 4-man front concept and then bringing a guy down. But again, Tyrone Johnson is down in the box as that slot corner. As much as we do motions and as much as we like to condense our formations where we run tight twins, you know what I'm saying, where St. Brown is either hiding in the backfield. Love that play, by the way. Or they bring him in as like he looks like a slot tight end. Johnson's going to get run over. But there you go.
Well, the Bills are 8th in points allowed, 14th in total yards, Coach, with their rush defense being more susceptible than their pass. They're 19th against the rush, 9th against the pass. And I love your breakdown of all that because I was watching Dan Orlovsky break down the Buffalo Rams game, and he brought up that they brought the safety up into the box to stop the run, and that helped a lot in the second half. But the Rams were then able to pass when there's only 1 high safety. And so I can't help but wonder if they do the same against the Lions, because the Rams have a very potent running attack and passing attack, and so do the Lions. And so it'll be interesting to see what the Bills try and do against them with that. And James, they might be getting some reinforcements back.
Yeah, well, they have in the last couple of weeks. They've gotten Matt Milano back, which is early in the season. He was one of the really big losses for them. One of their star linebackers. And they've gotten him back just recently, and Dwayne Carter on the defensive line also gives them another tackle to rotate in there. But they did lose Rasul Douglas and one of their defensive ends they rotate in, Casey Toohill, to injuries in the Rams game. So that does hurt their defense a little bit. But they're at least, I think Milano's getting up to speed, and when he's healthy and going, he's one of the better linebackers in the NFL. More of a middle type of guy. But I mean, he's tough when he's going. So that'll be a good addition for their defense if he's up to speed. They don't generate a whole lot of sacks. They've only got, I think, 28 on the season. That's 22nd in the NFL. They have 13 picks, which is just into the upper half of the league, but nobody on that team has more than two. So they're getting
Wow.
them from all over the place, but no, they don't have one particular ball hawk.
All right, great breakdown and analysis there. Coach, anything else you want to add about the Lions offense or the Bills defense in this matchup before we move to special teams?
No, I just think, again, we're gonna adjust, and we're gonna try to. I think we're gonna try to burn the clock and adjust to what they're doing to us.
All right, James, what do you have on the Lions special team? Dan Campbell said this is going to be important too. He actually emphasized that in his press conference today. Any thoughts on special teams?
I think it'll be interesting again to see who they trot out there as a punt returner. If they have Alexander again, or if they're going to have to go with somebody else, depending on how they feel about the guys that were there last week, how many of the guys come back this week, whether they need to keep Alexander on the roster or not, and so that could just be one of those things where Alexander could be caught in a numbers game, and maybe they have to have somebody else return punts if that's the only thing he's going to do.
That's a good point. I think special teams is going to be huge as always, especially if we have to punt at any point, which is logical because that usually happens. Not always, as we found out this year, but usually. And Jack Fox is usually pretty good at putting the ball where we need it to go. And Jake Bates has been doing great with kicking, especially the long range. Coach, any thoughts on special teams here? Because Campbell said it's important.
Yeah, I think the important thing is flipping the field with Foxy. And I think the other thing too is it'll be interesting to see if like last week, we never allowed them for a kick return. If you guys notice that, and usually once or twice in a game when we score points, we give them, get one into that landing zone and see if we can pin them deep. But I think they're trying to protect the guys on special teams because no more injuries. So I think that's, again, that from me, I look at that and I go, that's great coaching, because they're just like, we can't just kick the ball in the back of the end zone. We'll run down and loosen our legs up and play defense. So, but, and then Bates, I'm going to put the money on that Bates. He may bang a monster for the win.
All right. Well, let's move over to major storylines. Anything unexpected? I heard some people say the Lions should rest a bunch of players against the Bills game because it doesn't matter, and keep them healthy and get those guys that are banged up healthy. They didn't say rest a bunch of players. They said keep all the injured players, the banged up players out. And again, I'm going against that because you want to win these games. You're playing to win these games. And you know what? Did the New York Giants, I believe the last week of the season, rest their players against the New England Patriots when the Patriots were undefeated? No, they did not. And did they win that game? No, they did not. But when they played them again later, who won that game? The New York Giants. And that was in the Super Bowl. Then guess what? If we play the Bills a second time this season, it will be in the Super Bowl. So I'm saying no. James?
If you think that they're 100% or, really close to that, play them.
Yeah.
I don't think Campbell's going to take his foot off the gas. He hasn't yet this season. I think he's cautious with having guys back and saying, I want you right before you come back. But if these guys are right, I think they're playing.
And that's exactly what I think it is. And Coach, you're going to probably say the same thing here. The Lions are so good at player management. I mean, they gave Zadarius Smith the week off right? They'll make sure the players are right, but they're not going to keep somebody out precautionary because Campbell's already talked about this thing. Once you focus on the injuries, then it becomes something else. And you're trying to win these games because you want that number 1 seed and you want the bye, right, Coach?
Oh, for sure. And you're not gonna, you don't play to lose, you play to win. You don't sit people to say, oh, we're gonna save you. Well, what are you gonna save? And there's no way. And I don't like the Smith thing is identical to what I was thinking about is they care about their players more than the wins, but they're gonna play those players to get the wins if they're healthy. So
all right. Now, neither of you guys are doctors. I don't think either of you have ever played one on TV either, but I'm just going to throw something out to you. All right. A lot of people are saying Hutch will be back for the Super Bowl. Hutch now is actually going to come back for the NFC Championship game, if you haven't heard. That's the latest rumor, which is 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. Of course, the Lions have to get there first. And, I'm never going to count Hutch out, and that's what Dan Campbell says. But my question for you is, how optimistic are you on that happening? Are you simply going to leave it as you're never going to count him out and just see what happens? Or is it kind of hopeful thinking? James, let's start with you.
I think originally it seemed like wishful thinking, but it's sort of seeming a little bit more of a realistic option now when you're seeing him post these things on social media, his progress in coming back from this devastating injury. It seems like things are going well. There's been no setbacks, which is always good. Same thing can be said for Anzalone and his injury. I mean, he was up in the suite with Hutchinson last week, and he doesn't even have a cast on his arm.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. I think in Anzalone being an arm, I think they're expecting him back the last week of the season or the first week of the playoffs. A little bit less pressure is put on your arm throughout a game than your leg. But you're right. I mean, if there's a guy that can do it, it's probably, his name is probably Aiden Hutchinson. The way the guy is methodical in the way he works and the way he's determined. We've seen that through his college and pro career. Coach, what are your thoughts on this topic?
We're 8-0 since Hutch got hurt, right? And
Yep.
What wishful thinking's great, but they just keep playing and let him and the doctors take care of that. And if he's there, that's icing on the cake, cherry on top. I don't care. And you'll probably hear me and you and James scream all at the same time when we hear that he's playing. And we won't even have to talk to each other because we'll be so excited.
That, and I want to bring up one other thing, which you just kind of hit on, Coach. We're 8-0 since he went out. A year ago, we were like begging James Houston to come back because our defense really needed it. And I'm not saying our defense couldn't use help, but our secondary is playing at a level that we probably haven't seen with the Lions since the days of Slay and Diggs and those guys back in the day, right? So our defense, and once these other guys that were out last week come back, our defense is pretty solid. So we do have a lot going for us. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that. Another item to bring up, Detroit Lions playoff tickets are officially on sale for the wild card game only, the hypothetical potential wild card round. That would mean the Lions would have the number 2 seed, and that would be the only way. Or I guess, yeah, because whoever wins the NFC North will be getting the 1 or the 2 seed, because unless they lose out, because there's about a 3-game lead over the other divisions at this point. So if you want to buy them, you can go to Ticketmaster. They're running at $470 plus fees per ticket. That's for the 300 level section. We said it last year, said it the year before that. Well, we said it. Lions playoff tickets. I said that Super Bowl will be the most expensive ever. Every game last year for the Lions in the playoffs was more expensive than each of the other games. We've brought that up many a times. Is there a hack? Is there a way to get around this? I told people last year, get on the waiting list for season tickets, because that would allow you to get to the front of the line. I had a friend that did that last year, and they bought playoff tickets for the Rams-Lions game last year at a very affordable price, and they didn't have to do it secondhand. It might be too late to do that at this point. I don't know, but playoff tickets are on sale if you do want to go. I know my uncle goes to lots of Broncos games, and usually the closer you get to the game, the ticket does drop a little bit. I don't know if that's going to happen for a game in Detroit. I don't think those tickets are going to go down much. James, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think so either. We waited. We tried to wait for tickets to go down for that Colts game, and it never happened. It went the other way.
So you know what? Plan ahead is what we're saying. All right. We got to get going here. The show's got to wrap up. We are hitting that hour mark-ish. Time for the ref report. What do you got, James?
The Lions get the Adrian Hill crew, which is interesting because he's a University of Buffalo graduate. You know, and he has a little bit of history with the Detroit Lions in 2021 game against the Vikings, where Tracy Walker was called for a roughing the passer penalty on what appeared to be a routine sack of Kirk Cousins towards the end of the game that would have pretty much ended the game. It was on a fourth down. That would have been the turnover on downs. The Lions could have pretty much just taken the clock out. But they called Tracy Walker for roughing the passer. And a lot of people were like, what the heck is this? Sports Illustrated's headline was that it was the worst call in NFL history, aids Vikings and win against Lions.
Was that the game where we missed that field goal late and then they came back and threw it deep?
It could be. It was 2 plays later after the sack of Cousins that they overturned because it was roughing the passer. And Cousins, even after the game or in an exchange with Walker during the game, said he didn't think it was roughing the passer either.
Yeah.
So you got that going.
All right.
which is not nice. But they did call a Lions game already this year. They called the Lions Rams game to open the season. In that game, both teams just got called for 6 penalties each, so that seemed to be pretty even. Although the Lions did get called for multiple defensive pass interference calls in that game. The Lions were 0-3 in games that he called in 2020 and 2021, but are 4-0 in games that his referee crew has done since then. They
right,
do
well,
call
speaking of that defensive pass interference, I think the Lions have like the least number of yards gained for defensive pass interference when the Lions are on offense, but they have the most given up when they're on offense. So hopefully that trend changes a little bit this week, or there's no change, one or the other.
Yeah, they do call a lot of defensive pass interference and offensive pass interference as well. They will call the receivers for pushing off. The Bills are also 4-0 with this crew. They had them in week 6 in a win over the Jets. And interestingly enough, the game that the Bills played in Detroit that we mentioned earlier against the Browns, this crew reffed that game too.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot of history here. So let's talk. What's it going to take for the Lions to win this game? And first off, James, great deep dive on all that research and pulling all that up on the reffing crew. Nice work on that. Coach, let's start with you. What's it going to take for the Lions to win?
Keeping the ball in front of us on defense and controlling the clock on offense.
All right, James, what's your take?
Yeah, they have to keep Josh Allen from cementing the MVP trophy. If he has another big game in this one, he's going to become the prohibitive favorite. He already is in betting things. He's like I think negative 400 right now to win the MVP. But you've got one of the other guys who's in the conversation in the building too, so I think he's going to have something to say about that. But they have to prevent Josh Allen from just going off. If Josh Allen has an okay game, fine, but don't let him be a superstar and go off like he did last week.
Yeah, I mean, the cementing the MVP trophy is probably the best way to put it. I had don't let Josh Allen beat them. And how does that happen? Well, you lose containment, like Coach talked about right there, right? You can collapse that pocket all you want, but you can't lose containment. You can't lose sight of Josh Allen. And again, if Buffalo wins, it's going to be because Josh Allen wins that game for them. The Lions got to get some takeaways. I think it's that's another thing that could really be an equalizer in this game, or not an equalizer, but a game changer, right? We saw that happen in the Packers game early on when we got that turnover, led to a field goal. All right, prediction time. I've only got one real prediction on this one, and I think we're going to see a creative play by the Detroit Lions because it's been a little while since we've seen one. I think we're going to see a creative play in this game. Coach, what do you got?
I think they're going to create the field changing situation is going to be a creative play. If they don't honor the way we punt or fake the punt, we're going to steal one on them. But if they do honor it, we're going to have great punts, which is going to put them behind the 8 ball and flip the field.
All right, so you got special teams playing a key role in this one, kind of what Coach Campbell was saying was going to be needed. All right, James, what predictions do you have for this game?
I'm going to go with one that I guess it's kind of chalky, but I'm going to say Zadarius Smith gets another sack.
Keep them going. One on top. Just stack them, right, Coach? Just keep stacking them.
Stack them, maybe two. You said 1 1/4?
I hope so.
All right. Well, Coach, James, thank you guys. All the insights, all the work, all the analysis. Before we get out of here, James and I will be at this game. Coach was at the Packers game last week. James and I will be at the Buffalo game, so we will probably not be recording Sunday night. Look for us to record on Monday with a good breakdown on that and a little bit of analysis of the stadium and what's going on there as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, folks. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like, comment on socials. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.